Hello! Thanks for joining. Today we're going to look at 3 versions of a checkerboard Lauhala bracelet. Looking at our bracelets, we normally take a strip about 1/8 of an inch wide and use that as our weaving strips to go in between the weft or the band that goes around the bracelet, and we weave those together so we end up with some fairly nice even squares. This is a standard bracelet, and if you'd like to see how the weaving goes just to create the standard checkerboard pattern, click on this link up above so that you can see the bracelet started from start to finish. Taking a standard bracelet, you end up with a regular band, and it's a nice even square pattern, nice even blocks. But what I wanted to look at today was, what if we took our strips and we made them different sizes? In this case, I took the standard strips and I stripped them in half, making them about 1/16 of an inch wide. And I took my standard weavers and I made those the standard 1/8 inch wide end. So as it wraps around the bracelet, there's still about 6 strands wide, and we'll end up with a much more narrow rectangular pattern, but that'll go around the bracelet using the same standard weaving pattern, the over-under pattern that we do. So when we try to weave these in, it creates a nice tight pattern, and the little rectangles are actually going from one end to the other, as you see in this pattern here. The other variation that I looked at, aside from picking on your color or picking on the pattern of the strands, the other option that I looked at was, what if we had all of the strips stripped down to about 1/16 of an inch wide? Obviously, we're going to have a lot more weft to go through, but our weavers are still the standard 1/8 of an inch wide. So we'll wrap around the bracelet with these wider strips, 1/8 of an inch wide, and they go in between the more narrow bands. Each of these bracelets, I tried to make them about the same width just so that we could have a reference point as to what we look at. Some of the things to be concerned about is that it might make it a little more time consuming in either way, because either strand is much more narrow. So there's a lot of over-under weaving when you have 12 strands as opposed to 6 to weave through, and it can be a little bit more fragile, but the results are really spectacular. It turns out really great. It's a very fine, intricate weave. It looks great. And so these are 3 variations of the same type of weaving pattern, just based on changing the width. A standard width where you get some nice square blocks, and you get a 1/8 inch square. This particular piece, I decided to find a leaf that actually had a little bit of color variation in the leaf, just because I wanted to have something a little different, a little unique. And that color gradient, as it spins around, if it changes position on your wrist, it kind of changes the look of that the look of the bracelet as you're wearing it. So that was one consideration. The other 2 bracelets, again, the rectangle that we end up with, this one kind of runs across the bracelet and is a little bit more narrow to work with. So you got to have a lot of strands handy, keep them available. You might want to keep it a lot more moist, because it becomes a little bit more fragile, easy to kind of snap off once it starts drying out. So just make sure you keep these moist all the time. And our third piece over here is sort of the width. Again, you're going to end up with 12 strands to work with back and forth, but the weaver that you're working with is a little more hardy. It's a little more durable because it's an 1/8 of an inch wide, and so you can wrap around with it. It's a little bit, it still takes about the same amount of time. It's just these three versions. They're all the same width. Trying to cut them down to size becomes a little bit more challenging when you look at a piece that you're trying to strip down to 1/8 of an inch. You can see in the middle of this example that one strip ended up really thin, so it looks as though there's actually a divide in the middle, but it's just a really thin strip that's in place. So all three bracelets using the same weaving checkerboard pattern, but just the variations based on the different types of strands that you're using, the width of the strands. Main thing, like I always say, find something that you like to do, try it out, see what it looks like. It's pretty cool when you get different results using the same pattern. Thanks for joining us. I look forward to working on more bracelets, and I look forward to sharing more of these projects with everyone. And just try it out. There's no harm in trying it. Everything that you create is always a masterpiece. It's always beautiful, and they're always unique. It's just like a snowflake. Thanks for watching. Mahalo.